Hello and welcome back to the Gold Newsletter. My name is Kai Hoffmann. I'm the @JRMining guy on Twitter, and together with Brien Lundin, I'm the host of this channel, and I'm looking forward to this breaking news update. The company just announced news this morning, and we need to talk about them. It is Outcrop Silver, and I'm being joined by President and CEO Ian Harris in a few short seconds to discuss the press release. It is an exploration update. The company wants to give a bit of an overview of what they're doing down in Colombia, and Ian will run us through it. What are some of the highlights? What is the whole purpose of the program, and what are they trying to achieve? I think it's nicely broken up, the release. I prepared a couple of graphics as well to follow along so we can understand what the plans are for the company. Before I switch over to my guest, quick reminder, hit that like and subscribe button so we can interview more companies on this channel and reach a wider audience. Maybe you're invested in this company, you want others to see it. Hitting that like button, leaving a comment helps with that tremendously. So thank you for that. Now, without further ado, Ian, it is great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Gold Newsletter.
You too, Kai. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, really looking forward to catching up with you here on this exploration update that you just put out this morning. Let's talk about it. Run us a bit through the highlights and what were the key takeaways from the release?
Well, we really started, about mid-year running with a major goal of taking big step outs, and we put out news in June and July, and then last week on some of the discovery on Aguilar and some of the updated results, and we wanted to take a step back and say, okay, we need to let market understand what's really going on. There's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger goal in our 2024 program. So we really wanted to show how we're developing that pathway on how to make significant increases in the overall resource, because for me that's important, right? That Santa Ana checks so many boxes with its grade, its recoveries, all this potential, but we really want to show how it's a class 1 site primary silver deposit. And so a big part of that is showing how that this project can take significant increases in its overall resources, and wanted the opportunity to demonstrate the game plan that we're taking in order to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned in your press release, and I'm directly reading from your quote here, our 2024 exploration strategy at Santa Ana required expansion southward. And I stumbled over that sentence that I asked you beforehand as well. What do you mean by that? Why was it required, and why is it required?
Well, maybe it was my heart speaking, because I felt it as a compelling thing we had to do. If you look at some of the maps, and maybe we can bring them up in a little bit, but the majority of the resources in the North East section of the total title package, and that's where the majority of the work has been done. You can see it there. The green lines represent, and the orange lines represent veins that are included in the 37 million ounce resource of the Santa Ana project. And that's where the majority of work, and you can see there's a lot more squiggly lines around that area because more work has been done to date. But really, if you want to see a pathway on how this thing is really going to be increased, we obviously have to get deeper into this trend and show, not through little teeny steps, but really show through big, large steps. You can see where Aguilar is about halfway down that trend line. And I'm happy to say that we're currently now putting in the infrastructure to get all the way down to the very bottom, down to Mangos. And we will be able to achieve that by the end of the year, so we can demonstrate the overall potential of the entire package. So for me, it was compelling, because people say, the compelling question is, can you get to a much, much larger resource? And we want to be able to prove how we're going to get there. And that is the number one goal of this year. And that requires taking those big steps south.
Absolutely. Run us a bit through that groundwork and ground truthing you need to do. What are some of the basic geology work you have to do to get to that stage?
So I'm going to just take a step backwards. So if you look at this graph, you say, okay, the green and orange lines represent where the existing resource is today. But there's a large inventory between prospects, drill-ready targets, and currently the testing that we're doing, testing those drill targets this year. So if I tell you, as CEO, that I would like to see how this project can get to over 100 million ounces, then the next question is, I want to be able to do that on the most efficient way possible. And the most efficient way possible is having as many drill-proven targets as possible, and then be able to say, in these areas, I can add resources as efficiently as possible. Right? I want to make sure, even at today, despite all the hoopla going on, which I truly believe in, and where silver price should be going, right? I would still want to be able to add value through a strategy at today's valuations, which pushes over a dollar per ounce in the ground. And so that means we have to be doing that a lot cheaper. So we're spending our investors' money efficiently. So you can see down below, you have a second set that says 2024 targets, and you see a list of different, we see Aguilar, we see Mangos, we see Laye. Those are areas where we want to get a drill onto those veins and test them so that we know, is this an area that we can add resources, right? But at the same time, you see another kind of a second phase that we want to get those all ready so that they're capable of saying, these are targets that are worth drilling off. Some require more work, and we have to generate more. So you can see how this pipeline is building of where the additional resources are coming from. So for the Santa Ana project, there's a lot of different mechanisms to be able to create a new prospect. That's when you say, this thing is worth checking out. You know, either it's geochemistry, soil sampling, geophysics, etc. Right? But then once we say, no, this is a prospect, we go in some deeper dive, more sampling, channel sampling, and trenching are kind of the main indicators that we want to say before we drill it. We're going to use the best methods we can of saying, is it drill worthy, right? Is this a drill worthy target, and getting it up to speed and getting it ready so that we know this is worth testing, right? Not just throwing drill holes out just to throw drill holes out. But once we hit and can convert it to a discovery, now it's in that ready for resource drilling category, which is really about what we're going to be doing next year. This is about creating that inventory of where are we going to be bringing that additional resources so we can refocus next year into resource drilling, where we're drilling specifically to add resources to the books.
Put a time perspective around it for us, Ian, as well, because we saw the list of targets that you have, but of course you can't work all 20 targets. I didn't count them, but you can't work all targets at the same time. So put a bit like a timing perspective around for us, please.
Okay, so and these are broad brush goals, right? My broad brush goals right now, which I think we're doing, like we're delivering on that strategy, would be by the end of the year, we know where we want to be resource drilling next year, right? And I see us taking a solid year and then looking at doing an updated resource, right? And doing a very large increase in our existing resources. But I think it's going to take at least 2 years of solid resource drilling to get to the targets that we have in mind before we really go, okay, now we have enough meat on the bone that we should start looking on developing, getting into a project development type schedule. So end of this year, we know, okay, these are the areas that are worth drilling out for resources. And I think continuing to generate more on the back of it, but about a 2-year period in order to get to those, the overall, internal targets that we have of where this resource can go, which is not a 2 times growth, but a 3+ type growth on the, 2.5 times growth on the project resource size.
No, fantastic. Like Ian, like we always have to talk budgets, of course, as well. Can you give us a rough guidance of like what you're planning to spend to get to the drill ready stage, and maybe potentially talk about what it costs to get it drilled out?
Okay, so I'm going to start with some numbers I'm very proud of, and that's the first is our all-in cost for all of Colombia. So not drilling plus assays and geological stuff, but all of Colombia, which includes me because I live here, right, is $300 US per meter, all in, right? So, and our corporate G&A, because I'm not sitting in Vancouver, isn't very low. So there's a little bit added on top of that, but that is corporate wide what we are spending per meter, which is, I think, very impressive. I've seen projects alone on a project level, it's $1,000 a meter. Our actual drilling costs are a little under $200 per meter. So my goal is next year is we're going to be, and we're still defining it, but looking at next year between 24,000 to 48,000 meters. So the math is pretty straightforward. We're talking about a budget overall between 12 and 24 million. And so really a lot of that depends on market sentiment, right? Whether we're taking smaller steps or trying to go for big steps based on the at what point at what pricing we're doing those raises.
No, fair enough. Makes sense, and we all understand the junior mining game when it comes to cash raises and financings, of course. But I'm bringing up the table here real quick as well because I want to talk about prioritization of targets as well. Um, are they prioritized, the targets? Yes, they're further developed, but is that a priority table as well, or is it just a development table that we're looking at? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm looking at it and I'm noticing it's mostly from north to south. So a lot of it has to do with where they are in the overall mineralized trend. So I can see Aguilar, although Gradwal actually is further north, but Mangos and Lié are further down to the south. So really, I think it was more based on how advanced they are as an individual. You can see I have some key milestones in the development of an exploration target. Some are more advanced than others, right? But although Mangos, why is Mangos ahead of Milagros? It's because it's also a much more compelling target and is worth going after. So it's a little bit of a combination, but mostly I think based on how much work has been done on the individual vein.
Us as investors, like what targets should we focus on the most? Like which are the high priority ones? Which were the most compelling ones, or the ones that will add ounces the quickest, or the easiest?
Well, Aguilar was a high priority, but mostly because of its overall strike length. You know, it has about a 1.5 kilometer strike length, which means that we can add a lot of ounces on that vein. But internally, right, Mangos is the target we really want to get to by the end of the year, because it's the most prospective of the prospects that we currently have in terms of the channel sampling and some of the work that's been done on the ground and some of the spectacular grades. And we really think that it could add a lot to the project. But you know, it's interesting on this project. It's always filled with surprises. Like we were drilling on Aguilar and hit two blind veins as we're drilling it, and so that's the fun part of this, right? It's always a chance to make new discoveries. There's going to be disappointments, but we have to do it, right, and have to put that drill bit to the ground.
Oh, absolutely. The truth, or the proof and the truth is in the drill bit, of course. So, but Ian, maybe one last question. We briefly talked about it before the record, but it's the permitting situation, it's social license situation to carry out your work. Like, what does that look like? Run us a bit through it. Are you fully permitted to do whatever you want to do on the project here to get it to the stage you want it to get to? And what does the social license look like?
Okay, so although you don't see it all on those maps, there's the blue boxes, and those are titled mining titles where we have permit. So we are permitted to drill on all of them. Then around it, it's a green, which technically are called applications. But really, in Colombia, going through the application process and getting it titled is the same as having your drill permit, right? So, for example, we've got 17 kilometers within the blue boxes, and the green boxes cover about an additional, a total of 30 kilometers. So you don't really have all the green isn't even on there. So everywhere in blue, we have the ability have a permit to drill. But I think one of the things I've been happiest about is, these are big jumps. We're walking into new people's backyards, right? And so our ability to take these very large steps in a very quick amount of time not only shows the work that's been done by the team on the ground, but also the relationships that have been developed with our local community. The town of Fallen recently, right, just put up their letters. It's famous in towns around here that they put up their letters. Everybody wants to take their Instagram photo with it. But in Fallen, they put up their letters, but each one of the letters represented something. And L was legacy, and it was the legacy of silver mining and the future of silver mining for the township right there in the town square. And for me, it's an emotional moment because that's because we have the relationships that's been created, and it's something people are very proud of, and we've helped create that pride. And so that helps a lot in demonstrating the relationships that have been built, and that we're being able to advance as quickly, within a year, basically get 17 kilometers down a trend line. Says a lot, right? Because that's a lot of people just for the water line to get down to Mangos. Was conversations with 13 different property owners. And to be able to get that done in just a couple of months' time, I think speaks a lot for the relationships that have been built on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an easy feat, and it's so important to do it properly as well. So, Ian, what are some of the next steps we can expect from the company? What are some of the next results? Like, how are you going to follow up that work? How are you going to execute now? And how can we best follow along?
Well, you can flog me for not putting out as much news during summer because I was worried nobody was going to look at it. But our goal here is to be getting out at least on a monthly basis drill updates. I expect to have more drill updates on areas outside of Aguilar that we're also testing here shortly. But from here to the end of the year, it's really, I like the Aguilar story because it was news release one was we hit something. And I remember reading on CEO.ca or CA somewhere, well, but it's so narrow, right? I mean, it's the first hole, right? And really you're looking for these ore shoots. And then afterwards, we obviously hit a much wider intersection, a true ore shoot at great grades. And I think that's the kind of story people were seeing. We're testing new areas, but that we're hitting silver, we're hitting high grade silver is what we want. And then we're going to start tracking down those individual ore shoots. Yeah, so I think the news we'll see, go from discovery to hunting down that individual ore shoot. But I think the most important is the more names people start seeing, that we're building an inventory that will allow for resource drilling in the future. So between now and the end of the year, our goal is to be testing as many areas as possible so that we know how to develop our resource drilling plans in the most efficient way possible for our shareholders.
No, fantastic, Ian. Thank you so much for that update. I think that press release really helps understand some of the narrative, because I always struggle with the Santa Ana project, and then you have so many, like, what do you call them, like sub-project titles, almost like little areas.
They're individual
within that project, right? But it's tough to follow and keep track of what is happening. So I think an update like this is really, really helpful for the investment community. So thanks so much for putting that out. And to everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in here to the Gold Newsletter. Hope you enjoyed this breaking news special with Outcrop Silver. We were joined by President and CEO Ian Harris. If you have any questions, leave them down below. We'll make sure to ask Ian those questions. And if you're an investor in the company, friend of the company, hit that like and subscribe button as well, because the more investors that way you can spread the message to other and more investors. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with lots more here on the Gold Newsletter channel. Thank you so much.